Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. So my name is Barbara. Perhaps some of you already know me as your student recruitment advisor. I'm here with Julian from the student support team, and also Rita and Maria from Encubate Immigration. We'll just wait a few more minutes so that everyone has the opportunity to join, and we'll be starting shortly. We'll be doing a open question discussion panel at the end of the webinar. So if anyone has a question already, please make sure to send on the questions button, and we'll be answering it towards the end of the webinar, or even like answering you by text during the webinar, okay? Hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We'll just be waiting for a few more minutes, and we'll be starting shortly. If anyone has a question already, please make sure to send it through the questions button. We'll be addressing those at the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, I guess we can start. So, hello everyone again. My name is Barbara. I am a student recruitment advisor from Trebas. I'm joined here today with Julian from the student support team from Trebas as well, and Rita and Maria from Encubate Immigration. So today we're going to be talking a little bit regarding Trebas, why Montreal or Toronto, also regarding Trebas career services or programs, Pgwp and what is a designated learning institution, all the tuition fees and payment plans, what you should remember to do before you're applying for a student study permit, who are the student support team and what they can help you with, the study permit timeline, also the processes on how to apply for a CAQ and a study permit, some key considerations that you should keep in mind for those two processes, as well as touching base on main reasons for visa refusals. We'll be also explaining what is the SDS, the Student Direct Stream, talking a little bit about accommodations and student life, especially like in Montreal. And at the end of the webinar, we'll be discussing some questions that you guys send us and also some frequently asked questions that we receive all the time. So we're joined here today by Encubate. Encubate is a registered immigration consultancy company here in Canada, and they're also regulated by both the government of Canada and also Quebec province. So if you ever need some help with like any of those processes, you can reach out to them. Maria and Rita, would you like to talk a little bit, to introduce a little bit regarding Encubate?
I think you covered it briefly, Barbara. Thank you. Just want to add that we'll be, as Barbara said, we'll be helping to answer some questions and also adding our input into what we see are difficult situations and how you could address those when it comes to CAQs and study permits. Also, to let you know that you do not need to hire an immigration consultant, but if you have questions and if you're not sure about your process, we highly recommend to reach out for support. As this is a process that you want to avoid, obviously, a refusal. But other than that, thank you for the introduction, Barbara, and I think we're good to go.
Perfect. Okay, so basically, Trebas has been college since the 1979. We've been focusing on music, film, business, and technology, and we are a private college, okay? So we offer a lot of programs that are short duration, and we have a lot of different advantages in comparison to, you know, some other bigger colleges, such as we have a very downtown, a great location in both the cities where we have our campuses. In our Montreal campus, we offer programs both in English and in French. We have a lot of students from different parts of the world, so you will be having classes with people from countries you maybe never even like heard about it. And we have small classrooms, so you will be able to get full attention from your instructor, okay? Also, we do have the career services, which will assist you with internship opportunities, as well as, you know, learning how to apply for a job in Canada, because sometimes there are some differences regarding the type of resume, etc. And we do have a lot of famous, you know, alumni. Our professors, they not only teach, they also have their own, you know, industry jobs as well. So they have a lot of connections, which will give you the opportunity to make a strong networking during your program so that you can have an opportunity to have a good job at the end. Okay, so Montreal is the second largest city in Canada. it is bilingual, okay? So it's very interesting because you can see people speaking French and English as well. We are located right in downtown Montreal, so it's an amazing location. It's really close to a subway station, which makes, you know, transportation towards the college very easy. And also we offer a lot of like labs so that you can, you know, basically learn how to deal with the equipment if you're looking for a program such as audio and video post-production. We also have a lot of classrooms with high-tech computers so that you can get the best experience possible. Okay. For our Toronto campus, so Toronto is the biggest city in Canada as well. We also have a location that is really within downtown. Toronto is also, you know, known as the Hollywood of Canada because there are a lot of films that are being made here in Toronto, and also the music industry is very strong in both cities. So both campuses have amazing location, very easy to get to the campus, and both cities have a very amazing entertainment scene. For our career services, so we have someone who is responsible to help you find a job, okay? So when you start your program, you will have access to the career services. They will be assisting you with job opportunities within the area that you are studying. So if you're studying e-commerce, they will be sharing you opportunities of part-time jobs or even internships within that industry. If you're in analytics, they will be sharing as well. And they will also host a lot of different workshops so that you can learn how to write your resume according to, you know, Canadian standard, how to organize your LinkedIn profile. They can also train interviews with you, doing mock interviews, and they will be also organizing a bunch of networking events and getting some guest speakers so that you can have a better idea of what the industry looks like. Okay. Those are some of our industry partners. So as you can see, many international names there, such as Universal, Ubisoft, which is a video game company. We also have a lot of Canadian industry partners as well, such as CBC, Just for Laughs, or Juste pour rire, and Virgin Records, etc. And now with our tech programs, we're also increasing our partnerships towards those areas as well. So just to give you a brief recap, because I know a lot of you already have a letter of acceptance, but those are the programs that we offer within the Montreal campus. So we have these are the one-year programs. We have the live sound recording, and sound design, which are mainly focused on, you know, recording sound music for students who are very artistic. We have our entertainment management programs, which are music business administration and show and event management for students that want to, you know, be able to work in those kinds of events, organizing, hosting it, advertising it, and also managing, you know, artists' careers. And we have the film and television production program, which is also a one-year program, and you will be focusing on how to produce a movie, lighting techniques, camera techniques, etc. For Toronto campus, we have the audio engineering and production, DJ Arts, which is basically all the Montreal campus programs combined into 1 year. Okay, so you have recording, design, and also a bit of post-production. We have the event and venue management and also the entertainment management that are kind of similar to show and event from Montreal. And we have the film and television production and post-production. So you will be learning the production part, but also a little bit of the post-production. Those are also only 1-year programs. And finally, I believe that most of you, because this is a webinar that is intended for international students, I believe that most of you have applied for our 2-year programs that are offered in Montreal, which are eligible for the postgraduate work permit. So those are the e-commerce and online business management, the audio and video post-production, analytics, big data and business intelligence, and computer security analyst. So those are all PGWP eligible, okay? Unfortunately, we do not offer any PGWP eligible programs in Toronto, okay? So if that is your main focus, you might consider those 2-year programs in Montreal, okay? And basically, you know, audio and video post-production is more for, you know, students that are dealing with music and also who have some experience or who want to work within the film industry in the post-production area, which is basically editing sound and images and creating animations in 2D and 3D. We have the technology programs, so e-commerce and online business management, which basically combines business administration with digital marketing. We have the analytics, big data, and business intelligence for students who enjoy, you know, kind of like organizing data, translating that information for the higher management through like charts and also graphs. And we also have the computer security analyst for students who are into, you know, kind of testing the security of a system and that like to, you know, problem solving so that they can increase the security. So now what is PGWP? So basically PGWP is a postgraduate work permit, meaning that once the student finishes their study, some programs, and those are the ones I just spoke about, they would allow you to apply for this work permit after you finish your program, okay? The 2-year programs that we offer, they can lead for up to 3 years of work permit. That means that once you finish your program, you can stay for up to 3 years in Canada to gain some professional experience, okay? And I mean, if you have the goal of maybe applying for a Canadian residency in the future, that might help you with those plans as well. Okay, also very important. So what is DLI? DLI means designated learning institution. Each you know, learning institution, college, university here in Canada, they have a specific code, which is the DLI. And so you can find here the DLI number for Toronto and for Montreal. If you type that in the Canadian website, IRCC, you can also see some details as to whereas this institute is approved by the Ministry of Education and whereas they offer PGWP eligible programs, okay? It is very important to notice that even though those programs, they are eligible for PGWP, we cannot guarantee you that you will get, you know, that kind of work permit because there are some, you know, conditions that you have to do it yourself, such as you have to be enrolled full-time during your whole program. Okay, sometimes the students, they arrive here, they think maybe they can postpone their start so that they can start working and gain some money. That can jeopardize your PGWP chances. Okay, so please make sure that you read the conditions. You also need to have completed your program of study, and also, you know, if you have any unscheduled breaks, you need to let your institute, which is Trebas Institute, know. Okay, and also students, Julian will be talking about that later on, but usually students, they are allowed to work a certain number of hours during their studies. And so one of the conditions to be eligible for the PGWP is that you do not surpass those hours, okay? Here you can see also our programs and the tuition fees of each program. We do have some scholarships available, okay? You probably already know that. So basically, those are, you know, all the tuition fees after scholarships as well. And for international students, you don't have to pay it all at once. You can pay either installments per term or per year. Okay, just make sure that you are financially prepared with that amount available, because it's very important for your visa. Okay, so when you apply, you need to show that you have the tuition amount, even if you haven't prepaid it yet. Okay, so now I'll pass to Julian, who will be explaining to you what his team does and also how he can assist you further.
Thank you, Barbara. Good morning, guys. My name is Julian Aloysius Sutton. I'm a part of the student support team with Trebas Institute. Apart from me, I have Aisha Sultana and Gail Renee Francois, who's a part of the student support team with Trebas. So Aisha and myself, we cater to students who speak English, and Gail, she caters to French-speaking students. So the role that we play as student support officers is, we help students with their application of their CAQ, their study permit, any questions they have. We do our best to assist them, and getting the answers. Apart from that, we get all the status updates on their application and pass it on to our admissions team and keep them posted on what stage is a student at with their CAQ and their study permit. Now, post a student receives their study permit approval, we share information on insurance, accommodation, and also collecting their flight tickets and getting them enrolled into their classes. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself, Aisha, or Gail, and we would be more than happy to help you. All right, so moving on to our next slide would be, I know most of us on this call already have, you guys already have your letter of acceptance with you at this moment. And of the ones, the students who are, currently, looking for an opportunity to start off with Trebas Institute, the first step would be, to pay the admission fees, pay a partial tuition deposit. Once that's done, you get an enrollment contract. You sign the enrollment contract, and then the institute issues you your letter of acceptance. As the moment you get your letter of acceptance, we can start working on your application. That is, applying for your CAQ, which is the Quebec Acceptance Certificate, and your study permit. Now, keep in mind, the CAQ, which is a Quebec Acceptance Certificate, is only for students who are attending our programs in our Montreal campus. So any student who is going to attend a program in our Toronto campus, you do not need a CAQ. So only students who are applying for our Montreal campus would need to have a Quebec Acceptance Certificate. It is basically a province requirement, where the province of Quebec needs, approves a student to come and study in Montreal. So yeah. So moving on, after that, once you apply for your study permit, it takes around 4 to 6 months to for your desired intake. So we suggest all our students, you give yourself enough time, 4 to 6 months to apply for your study permit, and give Immigration Canada enough time, and you enough time to wait for a decision from Immigration Canada on your study permit application. Now, if you're applying through the SDS, which is the Student Direct Stream, it should take around, minimum of 2 months. However, we recommend, to our students, if they are going through the SDS category, to give yourself at least 3 months of time, because currently what we have noticed, the pattern with Immigration Canada is there's a lot of applications that are pending at their end, and we have been noticing a delay with an SDS application as well. We're going to talk a little more in depth on the SDS category. So what we suggest is all the applications that you submit to Immigration Canada would be online. We would share that information with you the moment you get your letter of acceptance. All right, moving on then to the next slide. All right, so we're going to talk about, now a little more in depth on your CAQ, which is a Quebec Acceptance Certificate for our Montreal students, and then your visa application process. All right, so before you apply for your study permit, please keep in mind that you have a new passport, or if you have a passport with you, please make sure that your current passport is valid for at least 6 months after the day you return to your home country. Because we have noticed that students have received their study permit. However, notice that hey, when they receive their passport request letter, it clearly states that your passport should be valid for the complete course of the duration of your program, and till the day you land in your home country for another 6 months. So it would take time for you to get a renewed passport. So we suggest the moment you get your letter of acceptance, to take a look at your passport, look at the expiration date. If it's going to expire, in the next couple of weeks or a couple of months, please get it renewed as soon as possible, and then we can start working on your application. Now, once you have your passport, validity, it's good to go. Then you can start working on your documents. That is, getting all your documents ready for your study permit and your CAQ application. So as I mentioned earlier, for CAQ, it's only for our Montreal students, and our Toronto students would not need to apply for a Quebec Acceptance Certificate. Now, I know many questions would arise saying, how do I go about applying for a Quebec Acceptance Certificate from my home country? Well, it's really simple. You need to go to Immigration Quebec's website and apply it from there. I'm going to share, talk a little more in depth on how to go about doing that. But once you have your letter of acceptance that is shared, to you by your student recruiter, either myself, Gail, or Aisha, we would reach out to you, and we're going to help you in starting off your process automatically. One personal suggestion that I would recommend, to all the students is, if you're not confident on, getting your application or submitting your application on your own, I would recommend to take a help from one of an immigration consultant, like Encubate. They can guide you in how to go about with your application. If you have any questions that you think that you have a slightest doubt, please reach out to an immigration consultant and get it answered, rather than applying for your study permit and then running into a risk of getting your study permit or your CAQ refused. All right, so moving on to our next slide would be talking about the study permit timeline. So once you have your letter of acceptance, so the next step would be to apply for your CAQ. Now, CAQ has 2 steps. Now, the first step is you fill in an online application form, and once you fill in the online application form, you need to wait. You need to make a payment for CAQ, which is 120 Canadian dollars. And post that, you need to wait for 48 hours to gain access to a page, which is the ARIMA portal. So once you submit the documents on the ARIMA portal, it takes roughly 20 working days. Immigration Quebec takes to give you an answer on your application. So we recommend our students, once you submit your application to Immigration Quebec, you have 20 days to prepare your documents. So rather than just waiting for an answer from Immigration Quebec, you can go ahead and start working on your documents of your study permit, which is getting all your financial proofs ready. Apart from that, getting your writing your statement of purpose or your letter of explanation, getting all that sorted out, including if you would like to make a contribution towards your payment towards your tuition fees, you can go ahead and do it within this period so that you have everything ready. And the moment you get your CAQ approval from Immigration Quebec, you can submit your application to Immigration Canada. All right, so 20 days it takes for Immigration Quebec to get back to you on an answer with your CAQ application, which is 20 working days. So excluding Saturday and Sunday, so 20 working days they take, which is roughly around 2 to 4 weeks. So post that. Now, once you submit your application to Immigration Canada, they take around 10 to 48 weeks. What we've noticed, like I mentioned earlier, there's been a bit of a delay with Immigration Canada because there's a lot of applications pending. So we suggest our students to start working on your application and give yourself at least 4 to 6 months to submit your application to Immigration Canada and wait for a response. All right, so moving on to our next slide would be, we're going to talk about CAQ. All right, so now we're going to talk about the first step. This is, again, let me reiterate, this is going to be only for our Montreal students who would need to have a CAQ, which is the Quebec Acceptance Certificate. All right, so the first step, since you have your letter of acceptance with you, is to apply for your CAQ, which is the Quebec Acceptance Certificate. So the most important and 3 documents that you need to apply for your CAQ would be your letter of acceptance from Trebas, your proof of identity, which is your passport, and a complete application form. It is also known as a declaration form. I'll explain to you where can you get that declaration form. All right, like I mentioned earlier, international students are required to obtain a Quebec Acceptance Certificate by Immigration of Quebec. So now keep in mind, it's only for students who are coming to Quebec to study would need a CAQ. Not for, say for example, a student and the accompanying person of the student would be the spouse. Now, the spouse is going to work in Canada, so the spouse would not need a CAQ. It's only the student who would need to apply for a CAQ and get an approval from Immigration Quebec. All right, so once we once we go ahead and submit our application, the first step is entering, you fill in your personal information from your passport and your, the letter of acceptance, which institute are you coming to study in Quebec? What program have you chosen? What is the tuition fees? What is the, the duration of your program? So once you complete that, the last step would be to make the payment of 120 Canadian dollars. So once you make the payment of 120 Canadian dollars, you finish the first step, or you complete the first step of your CAQ. Now, post the payment, you need to wait for 48 hours to gain access to the ARIMA portal with a file number. There would be a file number that would be generated by Immigration Quebec. So after 48 hours, you log into an ARIMA portal, you create an account. Now, when you log in there, you have this declaration form, the one that I was talking about earlier. Please do keep in mind that you need to take a printout of the form, fill the form, and sign the form. Now, when you sign the form, please keep in mind the signature on the form needs to match the signature on your passport as well. The reason being is, I have noticed personally a couple of students of mine have received intentional of refusal from Immigration Quebec, stating that there is a discrepancy with your document or your signature, there's a mismatch, and we are going to refuse your application if it's not corrected. So it is a simple step. So you just please pay attention when you're signing the declaration form, and make sure it both matches, because once you submit your application to Immigration Quebec, that's when the 20 working days starts off. So in case if you get a response from Immigration Quebec saying, hey, you know what, there's a mismatch with your signature, and you rectify the problem, and you go ahead and correct the signature and send it back, then we need to wait for an additional 20 days for Immigration Quebec to get back to us, which we can eliminate in the first step itself. So I would urge all my students to take a look at the application, make sure everything is fine, and then upload it. Now, you do not need to submit proof of funds for when you're applying for your CAQ. It's only if needed. That if you have them, please go ahead and do that. But the most three important documents would be a passport, letter of acceptance, and the declaration form that we were just talking about. All right, so moving on to the CAQ. Now, as I mentioned earlier, accompanying persons that are going to accompany a student into Canada, only if the accompanying person is going to study in Canada would need to apply for a CAQ. But if the accompanying person is going to work on an open work permit, would not need to apply for a CAQ. And like I mentioned, 20 working days Immigration Quebec takes to get back to you with an approval on your application. So in case if you do not receive a response on the 21st day or the 25th working day again, you can always feel free to reach out to Immigration Quebec to inquire on your application. A personal suggestion from my end and from our student support team, what we suggest is, unfortunately, though we would love to, reach out to Immigration Quebec to inquire on your application, unfortunately, due to security reasons, Immigration Quebec only gives out information to the person or the applicant who has submitted the application. So we from Trebas would, or a third person would not be able to reach out to Immigration Quebec to get an answer on your CAQ. However, be rest assured, within 20 days, you would receive your CAQ approval. Personally, what I feel, I did see students receiving their CAQ within, I would say, 10 to 15 days is what I've noticed from my end. So be rest assured, in 20 days, you would get that. And keep in mind, the 20 working days that you submit your CAQ application, you can start working on your study permit documents. Like mentioned earlier, your proof of funds, your letter of explanation. If you want to make a contribution towards like payment of your tuition fees, you can go ahead and do that within these 20 days. So it saves a lot of time, and it would give you enough time to apply for your study permit. Right. I would like to invite Maria to share a bit of insight, if she would like to, on the CAQ process.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Julian. That was very extensive. I think you covered most of the important topics on the CAQ process. Just like you said, tips from our side: prepare ahead of time. We've seen that usually takes 2 to 3 weeks to receive a response, but we've seen periods during the pandemic where this time was longer. So just plan ahead and make sure you count those months ahead, considering also that we need to do the study permit afterwards. Another thing to mention here is that depending on each case, a personalized checklist will populate on the system too. So as you said, in some cases and some circumstances, funds will be required. It depends on your situation, it depends on your case. So keep that in mind as well. Other than that, just in terms of times, make sure that the information you input is accurate, it matches that of your program. I know there are some questions that we prepared towards the end that are related to this, so I'll save it. I'll save my comments from there. But other than that, I think you covered it quite well, Julian.
Thank you so much, Maria. All right, so let's move on then. So since we've now, for example, let's go ahead and say we have applied for our CAQ and we have an approval from Immigration Quebec, say with a Quebec acceptance certificate. So now the next step in your application process would be to apply for your study permit and your visa. All right, keep in mind that all applications that you submit to Immigration Canada would be submitted online through the website, which is www.cic.gc.ca. Now, this information, we would be sharing it with you, Gail, myself, and Aisha. So do not panic. All the information we have with us. So as soon as you receive your letter of acceptance, we are going to reach out to you and we're going to guide you with the process of your application, be it your CAQ and your study permit. All right, coming to your study permit now, the most important, here's, on this slide, you can see, here's a short list of documents that you would need to apply for your study permit. The first is your proof of acceptance, which is your letter of acceptance from Trebas Institute. All right. The next would be your proof of identity, which is your passport, or if required, you might need to submit your birth certificate as well, depending on the country. Now, the next is going to be your financial support. It can be your bank statements, or if you have a sponsor who's going to sponsor your program or help you out, you will need to submit your sponsors bank statements and a sponsor letter as well. Now, the next one would be your letter of explanation. It is also known as a study plan. This is the most important document. It's basically you write to Immigration Canada and convince the consulate explaining why have you chosen Trebas and why have you chosen this program, and why have you chosen Canada to come and study versus why not a program in your home country, or why not a program in another country, for example, UK or the US or the Middle East. But why only Canada have you chosen to come and study for a particular program? So you need to be very cautious while you are writing your letter of explanation. We're going to talk about it a little more in depth in our coming slides. All right. Now moving on, it would be the next one would be your Quebec acceptance certificate, which you would have from the Immigration of Quebec. Now keep in mind that students should be in good health and willing to complete a medical examination if necessary. So when you submit your documents to Immigration Canada, you would be notified to submit your biometrics, which is mandatory. However, post that, if required, you would need to submit a medical examination as well. Immigration Canada would let you know if you need to produce these documents and submit to them. All right. And please keep in mind that students should not have a criminal record or should not run a risk or not be at risk to Canada. Everything apart from the medical examination that I was talking about, students might need to submit a police verification certificate as well, if required again. All right. Please keep in mind that whatever documents you submit to Immigration Canada should be genuine. Please do not submit anything that is forged or has been altered. You run a risk of being banned from entering the country for complete lifetime. To be honest with you, a personal suggestion is I'm not sure if everyone are aware of this, but Immigration Canada and US, they use the same immigration platforms. So in case if you get banned in Canada, you run a risk of even applying for the US as well. I'm not sure of the rest of the countries. This is just the information I have with the immigration part of it. Now, also one thing that I would like to more stress on is students must prove that they have enough money to pay for their tuition fees for the complete course, the accommodation, and living expenses. So what we suggest our students is before they apply for their study permit, if they can go ahead and make a contribution, at least 25% of their tuition fees, that shows Immigration Canada, really, they are financially ready and willing to start the program. So apart from you showing your, your bank statements and your sponsors information, they also look into, have you made any contribution towards your tuition fees or not? All right. So depending on the country, your application may take around 10 to 48 weeks. Again, it all depends on the country that you're applying from. And as mentioned earlier, because of COVID, there's a lot of applications pending and it might take some time. All right, so moving on to the key considerations for your study permit. Like we were talking earlier about your letter of explanation. So please keep in mind, students would need to write a letter why they intend to come to study in Canada. The most important that immigration consulate will look at is what benefits a student would have by choosing the program. Okay, the reason why have they chosen Canada to study and why not their home country, and what are the responsibilities as a student when you come to Canada. Apart from that, they also look into, how does this program benefit you or as a student when you return to your home country once your visa, that is just your study permit, expires. Like, for example, you choose a program for e-commerce and online business management. You complete your course of program, and then you mention to, in your letter of explanation saying, hey, I finished my program. Once I complete my program, I'm going to go back to my home country. I have a small business, and because of COVID, everything is online right now. So I would like to implement, whatever I've studied for e-commerce. I want to implement it and make sure my company grows. The moment my company grows, it would give opportunities for other, people to work as well. So please keep in mind that your letter of explanation does not exceed 1 page. I would say 1.5 is good, but please do not write your letter of explanation for at least 4 to 5 pages, because the consulate, to be honest with you, they do not have time to go through a 4 or 5 pager letter of explanation. Personally, if I have to go through a 4 or 5 pager, I would not do it. So because they have a lot of applications, please keep in mind that, so apart from that, be focal and be concise in your application. Talk to the point, why have you chosen, what benefits, what research have you done for on Trebas and on the program. Okay, questions to be answered for your study permit. Why do you wish to study in Canada, like I've explained earlier. Keep in mind now, what I would suggest, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, your student support officers. That's myself, Gail and Aisha. We would be more than happy to help you out in regards to your letter of explanation. Also, if you have a slightest doubt in your mind about, is my letter of explanation good or not, I would recommend, to reach out to an immigration consultant, Encubate, who's on the call right now. They can help you out, in giving you more insight on your letter of explanation. I would like to invite Maria to if she has a bit of insight that she can share with our students on, the letter of explanation part.
As you said, Julian, it is probably the most important document in an application. The way we recommend to look at this letter of explanation, study plan, however you want to call it, is look at all your circumstances and try to explain that briefly but precisely in that letter. As you said, we don't want a very long letter. Usually up to 2 pages is something that we can consider strong, but it all depends on your circumstances. I'll give you an example. Someone who has not studied for a while, let's say 5-10 years, has been dedicated in the past years to work, and now decides to come back to study one of the programs at Trebas. It would be more important for that person to stress why, after such a period of time, he or she wants to go back to study. So in some cases, letters may be a bit longer. We may have to include more details, and with these, more supporting documents. And what we always recommend is that whatever we would like to reflect in that letter, accompany that with supporting documents. So if we are talking about a specific experience that we had and trying to link it to the specific program that we want to come and study, provide supporting documents for that work experience, your resume, previous contracts and whatnot. So the letter is a great option for someone to really explain to the officer why he or she should be given this opportunity to grant that study permit and come study. But it's really, as I said, it's very tailored to each case. Someone who, for example, just finished a program and just wants to come and specialize in a field, in their own field of study, it may be less challenging for that person to explain why there's a switch in their career or why they want to continue to this program. So as a rule of thumb, I'd say always try to accompany all your statements in that letter with supporting documents. And of course, as you said, be truthful with what you write and you present to the officer.
True.
Yeah. And I think other than that, you did cover good part of it. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Maria. All right, guys, so moving on to our next slide, which would be key considerations of for your study permit. Yeah, apart from your letter of explanation, the most important part, that the immigration officer looks at is how financially ready are you as a student to come to Canada and study. Are you capable enough to, to look at it, to accommodate for your tuition fees, your accommodation, and your living expenses? So what we recommend is, if you're a student, at least 10,000 Canadian dollars for a year, which roughly for a month is like 833 Canadian dollars. Now, apart from this, the Immigration Canada looks at, you would need to produce your bank statements, which is for at least past 3 or 6 months old, that you need to submit to them with your complete amount in it. Now, what I would recommend is, what I've personally noticed with a couple of my refusals is, if you submit your application to Immigration Canada and you show an amount in your bank statement, say for example 10,000 Canadian dollars. Now, once you submit your application to Immigration Canada and you make a contribution, say of 5,000 Canadian dollars towards your tuition fees. Now, once you make a payment, we from Trebas send you the letter, a payment receipt. And when you upload that to Immigration Canada, the immigration officer would look at, the date of your application that was submitted and the date of the payment of your tuition fees, and also the bank statements. So there would be a little bit discrepancy, which is wrong. I would recommend not to do that. So before you apply for your study permit, if you want to make a payment towards your tuition fees, please make a payment, then submit your application with the payment received there. Make sure you have enough money in your account. We would be sharing you more information, on, the financial proof that you would need to submit, and what, if there's a sponsor that's going to help you out, what information the sponsor would need to provide, like their bank statements, or do they need to submit their, like a letter, a sponsor letter. I would like to ask Maria if she would like to, speak more on, the financial criteria on this, because I'm sure, Maria, you must have seen a couple of, a lot of refusals based off this.
Yeah, definitely a very important factor. And I'd like to reverse the thinking of it, based on exactly what you said. Students that come to us with refusals, we see it as one of the main reasons of refusals. We're gonna, I think there's a slide dedicated to that, but specifically on financials, make sure that, of course, we have the minimum. The more we can demonstrate, the better, whether that's on your own or a combination with a sponsor or solely through a sponsor. If choosing a sponsor, do make sure that we can demonstrate access to these funds, so that these funds are readily accessible for us to access when we come to Canada. Usually we don't recommend to choose sponsors, distant relatives or friends, because that would mean a challenge to prove to the officer, without birth certificates or family documents, how are we going to really access these funds? So there's a note there. Also, what you mentioned on the payment, whatever payments we make towards the program, add the receipts in your application as well, and subtract that from the total tuition fees that you need to prove. And then this is specifically for the study permit outside and in Quebec, and then for the CAQ would be a bit different. But in all cases, what we recommend is to demonstrate a strong bank account. That means that at least 3 or 4 months worth of bank statements, where we can prove that the money has been readily accessible there. Again, whether that's through your own bank account, a combination of yours and a sponsor, or solely the sponsor, and a sponsorship letter where that person is granting us those access to the funds. Be very careful with these statements as well. Nothing that's fake. So please always submit truthful documents. Yeah, if you believe that on your own, funds would be almost on the edge or not really making it the cut. Try to seek for a sponsor, because it's very important to prove to the officer that you'll be financially stable and that you won't rely on, let's say, finding a job, although of course you can, or social assistance to pay for your studies in Canada.
Thanks so much, Maria.
No worries.
All right, great. So guys, let's move on to our next step, which would be
also,
I'm so
sorry,
Barbara.
just to jump in, because we've been receiving a lot of questions regarding finance. I know that it's something that a lot of students have questions about. So Maria, could you just let us know, I know you discussed the kinds of documents, but also like a recurring question is whether the students can demonstrate monthly, like monthly amounts, or do they have to display, the full amount on their bank account?
Right. Yeah, so as I said, what we recommend is to prove a strong balance statement, or sorry, bank statement history. So prove it through, let's say, 3 or 4 months worth of bank statements where you can see all transactions. We recommend that the minimum amount, so let's say if we are supposed to demonstrate $25,000, that amount has been there for those 3 to 4 months. Any large transactions will require explanations, but to answer your question, so prove that you have those funds through at least 3 to 4 months worth of bank statements. So you may also count with a bank letter that has the details of your bank account, who's the holder, and what's the total balance as of this date. And make sure that the financial documents we're submitting are not more than 2 to 3 months old when we submit the application.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the clarification, Maria.
No worries.
Thank you so much, Maria. So moving on, we have the main reasons for for our visa refusals. I think Maria, you can take over the slide from here.
Perfect. Thank you, Julian. Yeah, so the reason why we like to explain, the main reasons of visa refusals is to avoid this specifically. So with our years of experience and cases that we have seen for study permits, these are the main reasons of refusals that we tend to see. Some of these could go together. I will go through this quickly, but to start with the lack of ties to home country and proof of return, please remember that this is a temporary residence application to Canada. You're coming to Canada temporarily, and we highly recommend to add proof of ties to your home country, whether that's family, economic ties, employment ties, and of course submit evidence and documents that support those ties. Lack of employment records as well, or not having sufficient income. These can help us by demonstrating that we have been saving, for example, towards this program, and that we have enough funds and we have had a recurring income that can cover these expenses, and preferably as well demonstrate employment records such as employment verification letters, pay stubs, previous contracts, as I said, to support our statements. Family circumstances in home country. We have to be very careful here with family applications, and we assess this case by case. So I cannot really give an advice that fits all, but as a generic advice here, when looking at family circumstances, of course, the amount of funds to demonstrate will increase. So make sure that we have enough funds to cover the entire stay of the family. Remember that at the beginning, we have to assume that we will not sustain ourselves with work in Canada or financial assistance by the government. Those need to be our intentions at the time of application. If we're coming on our own, for example, and we're leaving close family members back home, make sure that we submit proof of how this will serve as a tie. as an example. So if our spouses are working back home, so employment letters from them, school enrollments for kids and whatnot. Study plans poorly written, this is one that I see quite often, and that's why we were stressing previously the importance of a good letter of explanation or study plan. Make sure that everything you want to communicate and everything that makes you a bona fide student is reflected in that letter. Including ties, including previous education and work history. As I said, this very depends and varies in each case. A study plan of someone who has 10, 15 years of experience will not be the same as someone who has just graduated from high school or a recent post-secondary institution. Previous studies, very in line with what I just said. Number 6 is also important. Canadian education level is lower than previously obtained education. This does not mean that you cannot come and study an education level that's lower than what you have obtained. Let's say you have studied, a master's degree and you're deciding to come and study a post-secondary diploma here in Canada. That is acceptable, it's fine, but we would have to work harder and stress harder why this switch and why this shift in the level of education. So perhaps in these instances, stress why this specific field of study will benefit your career in the long term. Number 7, lack of financials. We just talked about it. And qualified sponsors, as I said, very important. If you're looking to get the help of a sponsor with funds, make sure that it's an immediate family member and that we can demonstrate access to these funds. Number 8, cost of obtaining the Canadian diploma is not justified with future employment opportunities. Very important as well. So what we want to demonstrate here is that the investment in these studies, in these international studies, will mean an increase or will mean a raise in your future career. So pretty much explain how these programs and experience that you may gain in Canada will help you growing back home. Just like a tip that Julian said earlier. So how for example, internships could help you and getting this international experience could help you with your future career back home. Fake and other supporting documents, absolutely not. Please do not submit any fake documents. You could be refused and banned as misrepresentation, which could mean and lead to banning you from Canada for 5 years. So please be truthful with all the documents that you submit, which goes with number 10 as well, which is hiding material facts and misrepresentation, especially in the security questions. I noticed that Julian mentioned this earlier as well. Canada does share immigration information with the US. So if you've ever been refused to the US before, do say it. A lot of clients say, oh, I did not want to say it because I thought it would harm my application having a previous refusal, and they were actually harming themselves more. So please make sure that you're truthful and answer all questions truthfully. And I'm not sure if there are any questions there. Okay, there we go. Perfect.
Well, thank you so much, Maria. That was in depth. All right, so guys, moving on. So we're going to talk about now, which is the student direct stream. It's also known as SDS. So SDS is basically, the student direct stream. It's a process of getting your study permit faster. However, to apply through the student direct stream, we have 14 countries that fall under the student direct stream category. And for example, if you're a part of the 14 countries, now the eligibility criteria to apply through the student direct stream is, first is you would need to have, to get a guaranteed investment certificate, which is a GIC of 10,000 Canadian dollars. That's with a Canadian bank. All right. I know a lot of questions are rising, how can I apply for a GIC from my home country with a Canadian bank? For example, if there's an Indian student, wants to apply for a GIC, and you can walk into a bank which is ICICI, for example, or SBI, and you can inquire about a GIC, and they would be more than happy to help you in getting a GIC for you. All right. So now you have your GIC. And the next step, it would be the eligibility criteria. The second step is you need to make a payment of your tuition fees. That's 1 year's tuition fees you need to make a payment of and get a receipt from your college, which is Trebas Institute. All right. Apart from that, you need to have a language proficiency test, which is for English speakers. For students, it would be IELTS. You need to secure 6 in each band. It's not your overall percentage of 6, but you need to secure 6 in each band for your IELTS. All right. So now, once you submit your application, now generally it takes Immigration Canada takes around 20 days to get on your first SDS application. However, we have seen a lot of SDS applications being delayed because, as I mentioned earlier, because of COVID, there's a lot of applications pending with Immigration Canada, and also depending on the country that you're applying from. Now, please keep in mind that once you submit your application through the SDS category, there's no special form or or an application or a website on Immigration Canada that you need to submit through the student direct stream. However, if you have all the documents, like you have your GIC that you submit, your tuition fees of 1 year that you submit, your IELTS of 6 in each band that you submit. Now, when you submit these documents, automatically your application would fall under the SDS category and not under a regular application. However, please keep in mind that you need to be present or physically present in your home country when applying through the SDS category. Say, for example, an Indian student who is in the UAE would not be able to apply through the SDS category because he's not in India, in his home country. All right. Maria, if you'd like to share some more thoughts on the SDS category, you can please go ahead.
Yeah, I think you covered most all of it, Julian. If we were to compare between a normal study permit application and SDS, obviously we have to meet the residency requirements, as you said, not necessarily citizenship requirements. So make sure we follow that. Obviously, the advantage is the processing time, especially during these times when we've seen that IRCC has delayed a lot the processing of study permits. So this could mean faster processing, but obviously it comes with the requirements of that certificate, the guaranteed investment certificate, the proof of payment, and language proficiency. Preferred, we recommend to do the academic one, IELTS academic, or TEF is also added to the list if the program is in French.
Yes. Thank you so much, Maria.
No
so almost right. All right, so moving on. So to our next slide, would be, I think we're going to talk about.
Oops. Just to add, sorry. Just since we are talking about SDS, so Maria, could you clarify regarding GIC? Because we had recently students saying that they couldn't find Trebas, but I mean GIC, it's a bank investment title, right? So right. Could you just go a little bit into what is a GIC and how they can, obtain that, and if they can use that money afterwards? Could you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. So the guaranteed investment certificate, you do this directly with a Canadian bank. I believe there's a list of Canadian banks that allow this. The IRCC's website does have more information on this. So it does not necessarily, it has nothing, this part has nothing to do with immigration, it has to do with the bank. And they would be the ones that could help with already that letter of acceptance, and the institution should be listed there. So this investment certificate, you do pay this money, and then once you're in Canada, you get a monthly allowance based on the agreement that you have with the bank, and you get this 10,000 back while you are in Canada at a monthly basis.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So Julian, moving on to accommodation and student life.
Yes, so moving on to, the next step would be accommodation and student life. So, as most of you guys know that, Trebas offers Pgwp, which is post-graduation work permit. So off-campus work permit, students are eligible to work, off campus for 20 hours a week during their studies and full-time during their scheduled breaks. However, please keep in mind, like Barbara mentioned earlier, that the moment you arrive in Canada, you need to make sure that you start, your classes immediately, because we have seen that, students have been, the CEQs have been, refused, or the Immigration Quebec had got back in the students saying, you are in Canada. However, you haven't started your program or your classes. So we highly recommend that students, once you're in Canada, the moment you land, it would be better if you start your classes and then look out for an opportunity to start working. Please keep in mind this, because Immigration Quebec and Immigration Canada are very keen in looking at this. I know majority of us, we think, it's better if we can come, I can look out for a job, save a bit of money for my tuition fees. However, if you do that and the registrar's office or, Immigration Quebec gets to know, or Immigration Canada gets to know, it could be an issue then. All right. Also, the student should be eligible. He should be a full-time student and be in satisfactory academic standing to work off campus. All right, Barbara, if you would like to add anything to this, you can show.
Yes. So yeah, please do not forget, you're coming here to study, right? You're coming here under a study permit, and within that study permit, you're allowed to work part-time, okay? If you want to work full-time, you need to change your permit towards a work permit, okay? Because once you're here under a study permit, the government understands that you're here to study and not to work. So you need to respect those rules in order to not jeopardize your future here in Canada.
True. All right, so let's move on. So the next, coming on to our next slide would be, I think it's going to be accommodation. So yes, now Trebas at Montreal, we are partnered with Campus One. It's a 5-minute walking distance from our campus. And if you need any information on, about your accommodation, you can certainly reach out to our, student services, which is services étudiants at trebas.com for more information on your accommodation. However, the moment you have your study permit approval and your visa stamped, our student support team, that is myself, Aisha, and Gail, we are going to share information on your accommodation and on your insurance and everything. So you can feel free to reach out to us to get more information on the accommodation and your insurance part.
Also, I just wanted to add, so for students who applied for their study permit, please do not make any arrangements for accommodations, or even let's say, for instance, you live in a rental accommodation in your home country. Do not terminate that until you receive a response, okay? Because we've seen some students that their process got delayed, or maybe they got a refusal, they had terminated the rent or sold their house, and how they lost their accommodation in their home country. And also, I mean, unfortunately, Canada, as well as the whole world, there are people with bad intentions, and there are scams with accommodations. So what we usually recommend is for you to be here first in a temporary accommodation, if it's not Campus One or any other kind of accommodation that is managed by a third party that is trustworthy, that you're here to visit that kind of accommodation before you close any agreements or make any payments.
All right. Great. Yes. Thank you so much, Barbara. I would like to add to another point that, what Barbara was just speaking about is, yes, please do not make any arrangements for your accommodation, and please do not book your flight tickets without getting an answer from Immigration Canada. Because I've noticed a couple of my students who have had their flight tickets booked for a certain day, but haven't received a response from Immigration Canada, which led again to, if they had to postpone the ticket, they had to pay additional amount. So please hold off. The moment you have your study permit approval, we will share information on what your next steps are going to be it your flight tickets, your accommodation, your insurance. We are going to share information with you. All right. Great. So moving on to our next slide, I think it's going to be insurance that we're going to talk about now. So yes, now coming to insurance, it is mandatory that right from day one, when you land in Canada, you need to have a medical insurance. And please keep in mind, the insurance should be from a Canadian company. We at Trebas, we are partnered with Alliance, and the cost is roughly around 635 Canadian dollars. But I would recommend, the moment, as soon as you have a study permit approval, you can get an insurance from be it Alliance or GuardMe. GuardMe is not partnered with us, however, Alliance is partnered with us. I'm not sure if there are any more, uh, uh, insurance companies that like from the home country, if they can be transferred over. Barbara, I'm not sure if you have any information on the
Yeah,
insurance part of
so
it.
basically you need to hire a student, an international student insurance, health insurance, okay? So in order to be that, usually they need to have like a head office or a representative here in Canada, such as Alliance, which is not a Canadian company, but they do have a headquarters here that offer this kind of coverage, okay? There are other providers, okay, like Sun Life, is one of them, GuardMe, etc. Okay, but our partnership is with Alliance, and they do have a very competitive price in comparison to other providers. It's slightly more expensive than GuardMe, but the coverage is much better as well. So you can also look into those kind of options.
Right, great. Yeah, once you have your study permit approval, the information that we share of, Aisha, myself, and Gail, we would be, sharing Alliance's website and also their brochure as well, that you can go through and get more information on it. All right. All right, great. So moving on to our next slide, for questions, we have a couple of, frequently asked questions that are here. So we're just going to run through them. I'm sure, Maria, you can take it over from there.
Perfect.
Okay, so I can read out the questions as well, and I also received a lot of questions from the students that are attending this webinar. So I think something that we haven't covered is, well, what permits will I need to study in Trebas? So basically, Montreal, you will need a CAQ and a valid study permit. Does a study permit allows me to enter and leave Canada, Maria?
Thank you. It does not, and this depends on your country of citizenship. So very important to differentiate between a travel document and a permit, in this case, a study permit, which is giving you status in the country and it's giving you the authorization to study and work part-time, as we said. But what will allow you to enter and leave Canada is a TRV if you are a TRV required country. TRV stands for Temporary Residence Visa, and it's a visa on your passport that you get stamped once your study permit is approved from outside Canada. That's what will allow you to enter and leave, enter Canada pretty much. And then if you are from an ETA country or a non-TRV required country, this is an ETA that you would also get upon applying for your study permit. There's no stamps, there's no visa on your passport. This is all electronic. And there's a list of countries that for these two type of visas on IRCC's website.
Perfect, thank you. Oops, sorry. Also, what are my working conditions? I think we already answered that. However, we have received a couple of questions as to whether the student can be here in Canada under a study permit, but be working for, let's say, his employer from his home country. Can they do that?
Right. So we always have to respect the working conditions that we have in Canada, so part-time. When it comes to working, so let's say we're working full-time, but for a foreign employer, this could be against labor laws, against Canadian and provincial labor laws, not necessarily with IRCC. So we recommend to look into the labor laws of each province in that sense, and in all cases limit your hours to what you're allowed to. As Barbara well mentioned earlier, you're coming to Canada to study, potentially, and in most cases you're a full-time student, and work should be something that we do on the side to help.
Perfect. Also, can I take a break from my studies? Will this affect my immigration status?
Right, and we see this more often than what we would like. You can take a break as long as it's allowed by the institution, by obviously Trebas in this case. There are different circumstances that you know will allow you, or will allow you to get that break. However, you cannot work or study while you are on that break, and it's not recommended to get more than 5 months or more than 150 days of break, because then that could obviously jeopardize your future post-graduation work permit eligibility as well. So be very careful with breaks, consult it with your advisor as well, and if you run into a specific situation, medical or family, we recommend to get advice on what to do with that immigration status as well.
Perfect. Also, a lot of our students, they are mature students that come with their family. So they are often sending us inquiries regarding what kind of visas they would need to apply for their families as well. Right. So let's say like a family with like where the father is coming here to study and the mother is coming with them, and also let's say 2 kids that are underage. What would be their visas usually?
Right, and this will depend on the program. So for your Toronto campus, the spouses won't be eligible for that open work permit, as it does not grant the post-graduation work permit. It goes within the same line. Kids could apply for a study permit, but they would have to pay international fees. But for the Montreal campus, it changes. Spouses are eligible to obtain an open work permit, and kids can apply for study permits from the age of 5. If they're younger than 5, they could apply for their visitors visas or ETAs, if they're depending on their country, and let's say come as visitors, and then they could also have the option of applying for a study permit inside Canada upon completing or upon turning 5.
Perfect. And also in addition to that, remember that if you're coming with your family, you will need to show that you have the financial requirements to support your family financially here as well. Okay, right. So just keep in mind that the amount that you need to show will change and will increase depending on the number of family members you're coming with. Can my kids study for free if I study in Trebas? I believe that would be for the Montreal campus.
Correct.
So are they eligible for like primary and secondary school to like attend those schools for free in Quebec?
Up to secondary, so up until high school, it would be for free if it's in a public school.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We get a lot of like questions regarding Pgwp as well. I believe that would be pertaining number 6 and 7. So they ask about time. How can they calculate how many years of postgraduate work permit they can obtain?
Right, and this is really up to the discretion of the officer. What we've seen in practice is 2 years program tend to lead to 3 years, but as previously mentioned, it is not guaranteed. No one can ever guarantee that. We've seen some cases where it's been granted for the same duration of studies. So if we studied for 2 years, you would get the 2 years, and be careful with accelerated studies as well, because some accelerated studies, even if the program length was supposed to be 2 years, if you completed that in under 2 years, the Pgwp could be given for that time. You know, in all cases, we see that it tends to be the 3 years, but have to warn you about the few cases we see here and there.
Perfect, thank you. Also, we do have a lot of students inquiring about permanent residency.
Mm-hmm.
So can you touch base on that a little bit?
Of course. So permanent residency is something that most students think or look into upon graduating or before graduating. It's very important to understand that Quebec and the rest of Canada pretty much have very different immigration systems. At the end of the day, they all have the same process in terms of security, medical, and financials that has to go through the federal government, but the selection of it, whether we're eligible for a program or not, will be assessed at a provincial level in the case of Quebec. And if we go, for example, through express entry at a federal level, through any other provinces. So what we recommend in these cases is, because important to understand that immigration to Canada is based on selection. Most, I would say about 90 to 95% of programs, except a couple here and there, do require you to get an invitation or get selected by either a provincial government, federal government, or MIFI, Quebec in this case, and upon receiving that invitation, applying for permanent residence. So it's important, and we highly recommend students and clients to look at all the factors that will qualify them for each of these immigration programs, run an assessment, run calculation points that will let them plan, well, these are the steps that we need to take in order to be eligible for this program and get invited. Immigration to Canada does not work in a way where we apply and wait for a response. We need to get invited, and upon having that invitation, submit our permanent residency application. There are many different programs. There are over 64 programs for immigration in Canada. Something that I'll briefly say is that intentions are a very important factor here. If we intend to permanently reside in Quebec, we would have to go through the Quebec immigration system. There are different programs such as the PEQ or the federal skill or the skilled worker program, sorry, through ARIMA. But if we intend at the time of application to reside outside of Quebec, we can then look into other provincial programs or the federal system, such as express entry. And I think one of the questions there, Barbara, I'll just go ahead and answer towards the end, was you know, whether I could move to another province after graduating. You can absolutely do so. A post-graduation work permit is a federal document. It's issued by the federal government, and it's an open work permit in nature that allows you to work for any employer, any location, as many hours as you like for the duration that's given for. So with that Pgwp, you may start and work in Montreal if you studied there and then switch to other provinces, or directly move right after graduation with that Pgwp and use it to acquire qualified work experience.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Maria. Also, so I mean, like, I think we covered most of the questions.
Right.
Regarding French. Usually Quebec prefers that people speak French if they wish to reside in Quebec.
Right.
There are also programs from Quebec that offer free French classes free of charge for temporary residents, which would be your case as students, as well as, let's say, your partners, okay? So that is something important to consider. And also, of course, I mean, like, it will help you a lot for job opportunities within Quebec as well. You do not need to be fluent, but it's very important that you know some level of French and that you are interested in, settle within their culture in the province as well. Okay, and Trebas also hosts, workshops to help you learn French as well. So we covered that. Regarding study permit refusals, like, can they reapply? What do you see usually in those sorts of cases?
Yeah. So you can obviously reapply, but we only recommend to reapply when you understand the reasons of refusals. When someone gets refused, they would get a generic refusal letter with or stating the reasons, the main reasons of refusals. These are generic reasons. What we recommend to do is to obtain an ATIP report with the officer's notes, where we have access to all the steps that we're taking throughout the application and the notes from the officer with the actual reasons, where the officer actually types because of this, this and that, or not enough family here, there are enough documents supporting this statement. That will give us a real insight as to why it was refused. We recommend to reapply once we've gone through these notes and once we can confirm that we can overcome these notes. So if one reason of refusal was, for instance, that we don't have sufficient funds, for example, and we cannot improve that situation, we recommend to wait a period until you can improve that financial situation and then apply. Never reapply with the same documents and same circumstances as you initially apply, because the officer will come back and say, look, I refuse you for these reasons. You came back with the same. I still have the same reasons of refusal.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Also, like, can they use the same CAQ in case they defer, or let's say their study permit was refused and they need to reapply?
Yes, so unfortunately, well, it depends on the times, but CAQs would be given for the duration of the program and for that type of program. So if let's say we get a refusal of a study permit after having obtained a CAQ, chances are that there's been enough time has passed for us to not longer be able to enroll in that program, and therefore we would have to submit a new CAQ application to resubmit that study permit. So be careful. Again, going back to what we said previously with the times, plan ahead and make sure that that's something we keep in mind. But yes, always look at the dates and the type of program that's given on the CAQ. We have to follow those. If you want to defer the program and the new start date or let's say end date, it's out of the dates of the CAQ, we would need a new CAQ.
Perfect, thank you. And finally, I mean, like, what is the difference between applying by themselves and with the help of an immigration consultancy company such as Encubate?
Right. So as I mentioned at the beginning, you don't need to hire an immigration consultant to assist with your application, but it is recommended, and from my experience and our team experience, we recommend it if you have questions or if you believe that your case is a bit more complex than other cases, or just simply if you're not sure about what documents to submit. Something I'd like to stress is that the government's website or my CIC account, when you go to apply for your study permit, populates a generic checklist. What we can help or where we bring the value here is on advising you on supporting documents and making a strong case on your application based on your specific circumstances. So the way we work is we have a consultation with you. We look into your factors, we look into your previous experience, education. What are your objectives after graduating? How can we link these studies with your previous education and your future career? And we make a tailored checklist of these documents that will make a strong application, and obviously a complementary study plan that we said was very important for this submission. So again, you don't need to hire an immigration consultant, but we can obviously bring the value in providing strong applications and obviously advice on questions that you may have family cases, previous refusals. Obviously, we can assist with everything.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Maria.
Mhm.
I believe with those questions, and also we covered most of the questions that we've received. For students that are asking regarding breaks from Trebas, so we usually have a summer vacation as well as like a winter vacation. It's usually like 2 to 3 weeks. So within this time, you can work full time. You can also travel. If you want to spend the holidays with your family, you're free to do so. Okay. Regarding intakes, so, and also like particular questions regarding your application process within Trebas, please reach out to either your SSO, your student support officer, or your student recruitment advisor. Okay. And also, if you have any like very specific questions, because basically here this webinar is to give you an overall view of what the processes are like and give you some kind of tips. If you have, you know, some more specific questions that are specific to you, Maria, you do provide like one-on-one consultations like that are like in a smaller period of time, right? Let's say if I have some questions like very specific, I can.
Yeah,
yes.
And you can contact us to either connect at encubate.ca or our WhatsApp number listed there. We do provide consultations where we sit down, we understand your case, and we provide you with recommendations. If you would like our full support on the study permit application, we provide it as well. But as Barbara said, if there are specific questions and you're not sure about certain factors on your application, you feel free to book a consultation with us.
Exactly. And also, if you wish to maybe, you know, just like Maria said, do an assessment to see what would be the best match for, you know, your plan of applying for, you know, a permanent residency.
Immigration.
You can also, yeah, you can also reach out to them and they will be able to advise you a little bit better because as Julian said, we from Trebas, we're not designated immigration consultants, okay? So if you have these kinds of questions, it's better to reach out to someone that has such credentials or to the Immigration Canada website.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you all for joining. Thank you so much, Maria, Julian, Rita as well for joining us. And I hope that everyone has a great rest of the day or evening, whatever you are. And we'll make sure to reply any questions that weren't answered and feel free to contact us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.